Welcome everyone to Museum Minds. If you're a museum professional or museum adjacent professional and you're looking for a little bit of learning, a little bit of networking, and hopefully a couple of laughs along the way, you are in the right place. So a couple of housekeeping items. Please introduce yourself in the chat. We would love to hear where you're from. I see some people who are already saying hello in the chat, so thank you for that. Think of a few questions for today's Q&A section at the end. Like Beth said, we have a long list if nobody says anything, but if something pops in your mind, make sure to save it for the end and please double check that you're on mute. We love it when your camera is on. We love to see your beautiful faces, but every once in a while we get a little bit of background noise. So if you can make sure you're on mute, that would be fantastic. Do you want to move to the next slide?
Yes, this is our
Okay.
reminder from last month.
I'll let you take that one, Beth.
Sure, absolutely.
Yes.
One thing you might notice in our emails recently is that we have opened up Museum Minds for sponsorship. This is something that Rainey and I have floated, as I said, for the last 2 years, just to be a great service to the community. And we recently opened it up for sponsorships last month. Cadron Creek Play sponsored us just to keep this free for you all. So if you're curious, go take a peek at them. All right. We are on record, and this is the friendly reminder to make sure that we're on record because sometimes we make mistakes. But we are definitely on record today, and it also serves as a friendly reminder to everyone who signs up for this call. Every time you register for Museum Minds, you will get an email the day after the call with a link to the recording. We do it every single month. You'll always get the recording as long as you register. If you don't register and you're just on our email list, you may have to ask us a pretty please later after the fact, or go to the archive inside Museum Leaders Academy. But we always press record.
So Beth, why don't you tell us what this meetup is all about? I
Oh,
imagine we have 121 people and counting in the room
well,
today. So
yeah,
yeah, so I'm sure we have some newbies. So do you want to talk about what Museum
sure.
Minds is all about?
Sure. Museum Minds is this amazing, what I literally called earlier this week, learning network, right? Rainey, we just talked about this. It's a
Yep.
learning network where people of like minds come together. All of us who love museums. Some of us work in museums. Some are museum adjacent. Some of us just love them for the sake of loving them. But every single month, we talk about some sort of museum topic that would be beneficial to museum professionals. One month, Rainey will talk about marketing or arts organizations. One month, I'll talk about leadership development or strategic operations, lots of times in children's museums, but not always. And then oftentimes we also have guest speakers on because we don't know everything. But we love our friends that know more than us. And that is, again, a great leadership tool in that we invite in the people who know differently than we do to come and chat with us, some of which are on the call today. So make sure you put out any question that you have because there's going to be a hive mind of awesome information happening here. So that's what this is all about.
All right, so to continue off of that, again, I know some of you have been here before, but the way that each session works is we usually have about 5 to 10 minutes of housekeeping, which we're about to wrap up because you're here to hear about the actual content. And then Beth today will be talking for about 30-ish minutes. Sometimes we go a little bit over. We try to keep it at least to have a certain amount of time at the end for questions. And then one thing that we started a few months ago is the Museum Minds after party. So if you want to stick around and have more intimate conversations and you're a part of one of our communities, feel free to stick around. If you want to learn about our communities, you could also stick around and ask about that. But it's basically, and we'll be talking about our communities before the after party too. So anyway, so if you have extra time, we'd love you to stick around after that as well.
And that's usually about 30 minutes.
Yeah.
Just casual, fun, but it gives a little bit more of an intimate setting. Who are we?
Who
Rainey,
are
you want to
we?
introduce yourself?
I would love to. So my name is Rainey, and it's pronounced rainy like the weather. Rainey Robison, and my business is Neptune Sugar. I work with arts and culture organizations primarily with their branding, messaging, and storytelling, and I run digital courses and cohorts, which I'll talk about at the end of the presentation as well. So you guys can maybe hop in my community.
Awesome. Awesome. I'm Beth Housewert. Oh my gosh. And again, we noticed this last month, but also life. We don't have our names on here.
Oh, we don't.
At some point, I guess you just have to look at the Zoom name that's there on our square. I'm Beth Housewert, and I run Inspired Impact. Like I mentioned earlier, I do leadership development, guest engagement training, strategic operations, all of that good stuff under the umbrella of Inspired Impact. That's my business. Working across the nation, I have a couple international clients as well, doing super fun stuff. Oh my gosh, so fun, so fun. So I do that, and I also run Museum Leaders Academy, which is a really awesome community you'll hear more about later.
Sometimes Beth and I take turns doing this
We
part,
do.
so so
And when
it's
it's
still me.
quiet, one of us
Yes,
just
I
jumps in.
apologize for that. I did want to mention that we do free discovery calls. So if you would like to chat and take 30 minutes of our time just to see what we do or ask a question that is burning on your mind, go ahead and scan that QR code. I'm also going to put our information in the chat right now. And we would love to hear from you. Again, not enough people take advantage of this. I think we're not going to try to sell you anything. It's just a nice way to get to know you. And again, if there's something on your mind and you just want to take a half hour of our time, go ahead and do it. So that's in the chat now. And then I think we're almost ready.
We are so ready.
Yes,
We are so ready. We have a full house
yes,
today.
we do. This is really exciting.
And it's because we're talking about exhibits. And I can tell you already, we have some exhibit heavy hitters in the room.
Mhm.
Word. Paul Orselli is here. Cassie Miles is here at a new museum. John Shaw is here. We have some exhibit heavy hitters. Daniel Guyton is here. If you're hearing those names and they sound familiar, well, they're in the meeting and you can go ahead and ask them questions too, because we don't gatekeep here. All the good folks are here and we're excited to see them. So, Sweet Spot Exhibits. When I was at Interactivity a couple of years ago, we did this really awesome presentation. And I have to say that I have referenced back to it so many times. And it got to the point that I was like, I have to figure out a way to record some of this stuff because then I can just say to people, hey, the content is there. Go watch it. It's so great. And like wrangling cats to get us all together, I will absolutely pay tribute to all of the people who presented with me because that we did such a good collaboration. But I wanted to bring back some of that content because of the fact that it is evergreen, but also it was so incredibly powerful when we presented the first time. So, when we put out this quick little blurb about being creatively resourceful with your galleries, we got so many questions. So many questions. So, what you'll see is, let's see, where do I have to click to make them come up? How do we section things off in a very large open space? Make me think about this. How do folks deal with storage once alternative exhibits are no longer needed? Would it make sense for small museums to collaborate on curating sweet spot exhibits to share expertise, collections, cost? What are some creative off-the-shelf solutions or resources or brands, especially when in-house capacity to build even small elements is limited? Mm. Last one, last one. How to approach this topic without having a full house in-house fabrication available. All of these things were right on target. And I have to say, when we initially put this together, this is the stuff that we were all dealing with on a daily basis. And we wanted to be able to be a really good resource for everybody. So that's when the mastermind assembled. I'm telling you, again, all credit goes to these folks, again, some of which were on the call today. And they can chime in at any time if they want to add. This was the session we did. If you happen to be at Interactivity way back when in 2024, wow, 2 whole years ago, in Madison, Wisconsin, you may have seen this little crew. Great, great folks. And we did all kinds of great brainstorming about what makes these really good transitional temporary exhibits, things like that. So I wanted to give a little snapshot of what we talked about to you all today, just so that we had that broader audience. And obviously, people are interested. Based on the attendance numbers, based on our registration, people are interested in how to be creatively resourceful with the spaces and with the things that they have already in their exhibits or in their storage or in their museum. So today we're going to answer some questions and we're going to do a little bit of brainstorming. So, what is a sweet spot exhibit? A sweet spot exhibit. This is something that is also a tongue twister a bit. It is what we categorized as kind of a temporary or transitional exhibit. It might be an exhibit that stays in a gallery for more than a couple weeks, more than a month, maybe even a year. But it's not something that's a permanent exhibit. It's not something that's professionally designed, made, bolted to the floor, things like that. It's an exhibit that is going to kind of morph and change, and this is, things like that. So that's what we're talking about. Sometimes we call them transitional exhibits, temporary exhibits, sweet spot exhibits, all of which mean short-ish term, but not so short that they need facilitation, because to me, that's a program. So there's that. And what I am noticing, hold on, I need to stop sharing my slides and then reshare them because I'm starting to notice that pictures from the behind are not showing up. So you're going to get my face for a minute, and I'm going to talk to you a little bit about why we would do sweet spot exhibits and what is a really good reasoning behind having these kind of temporary or transitional exhibits. One of the reasons that we talked about was an opportunity to prototype a little bit, an opportunity to try something out, an opportunity to fill a space when you're in between travelers. There's lots and lots and lots of reasons why we might do a transitional exhibit or a temporary exhibit. And those reasons are about to be on the screen again. And look at that. I feel like I kind of won the day today because I was just able to talk through that whole thing and multitask, right? Sometimes that is called winning. And now I'm going to share my screen somehow when I get to a point where I can find that part. I love it because just the other day we were talking about how sometimes we need help with technology. And I was like, I do these calls all the time. I don't always need help with technology. Well, there we go. So here are the reasons why you might do sweet spot exhibits. It's a little something new in your galleries. It can be lower risk than bringing in a big name designer. It can be something that's dynamic and ever changing. Maybe it's a promotion that you're doing for something that's coming up. Maybe you just want to reinvent something that you used to have out and make it a little bit more fresh, right? For sure, for sure. But there are all kinds of things that you need to think about when you're doing these sweet spot exhibits. Like, what are risks and challenges that might come about? What do you think? I want you to put it in the chat. What are some things that you can think right off the bat before you know the specifics, before you know anything more? What would be your concern about having an exhibit like this? I know sometimes it takes a minute. Capacity. Yes. The questions that came up in the beginning, like, what about the people? I don't want it to look cheap, Heather. I'm right there with you. Absolutely. Is the juice worth the squeeze? Love it. Love it. What are the visitor expectations? Because the rest of your building is filled with professionally designed exhibits. Absolutely. How much is it going to cost? How are we going to keep it clean and safe? Does it tie into what our permanent exhibits are now? Ugh, we don't have enough time to make it look purposeful. Oh, yes, yes. Ooh, kid germs, exclamation point. I hear you, Carrie. Staff needs putting in so much work for a little bit of return on investment, or rephrasing that, putting in a lot of work for a short time period. Yes, for sure. How do we build up a handy and skilled volunteer group? Oh, that's a whole nother presentation. Yes. How can it be immersive yet temporary? I completely agree. There are so many, so many. Oh, Daniel, right? Am I just going to have to fix it all the time? Right. You hire professionals for a reason because they know how to design things that don't break as often, right? So, how is it that you can just jump in and put together an exhibit and think it's going to be at the same quality or level of a professional? I agree. These are all super valid concerns. Very, very, very much so. Especially the safety mention with this amazing tapescape that's on the screen right now. And I have to tell you too, just caveat, this was presented at the Association of Children's Museums. So lots and lots and lots of children's museums references here. But let's brainstorm in the chat as you see pictures on how you might be able to make that into your exhibits. If you're a history museum, art museum, science museum, things like that, historical house museum, you know, or at least I hope you know, maybe the newbies don't know, but I do have a bit of a plan about museum minds. And coming from the children's museum world, that plan, I don't always want to say evil, but that awesome good plan is that every museum would have interactive elements and every museum would have fun stuff to do and loose parts in some way that fits their mission and things like that. So you're going to see a lot of that today. And I just want you to really get that thinking thought together about how could I apply this to my museum if I'm not a children's museum. And I'll do that through chatting as well. All right, so let's head to the next part. So we talked a little bit about what are those risks and challenges. Here's one of them. And amazingly, the second picture is Glazer Children's Museum, who did this Forts exhibit. And one of my thoughts and concerns always is it going to look messy? And is it not going to look professional and things like that? I can tell you that when being prototyped, it might look like the first one, and people are still going to love it. And it's going to give you so much information that you can come back and make that second picture. And if you have not seen Forts at Glazer yet, go to their website because it is so fun and so amazing. And Nina, I'm pretty sure she's right there in the picture, um, has told us that it's one of their biggest and most exciting exhibits that is happening, and there is pure engagement long term over and over and over again. So, though that isn't existing right now as a temporary exhibit, it started as one. And they did a temporary gallery to kind of prototype and see what might work best. So, that's that. Today, as we're going to talk a little bit more, we're going to go through these specific categories because as you're planning your temporary or transitional exhibit, you kind of benefit, well, you greatly benefit from having some sort of framework, some sort of place to just anchor your thoughts as you start to move forward in this planning and designing and thinking. So we're going to go through structures and environments, a little bit of loose parts information, some partnership opportunities, and maybe even some seasonal things that you could do in being creatively resourceful. And then, of course, we can't forget the little stuff, which really is what makes these spaces immersive. And this is what makes these spaces exhibits. Because so oftentimes, past museums I've been at have done the exact same thing, and it totally works, is that you have a big cart of blue blocks.
Hey, Beth, I think you may need to reshare again. I
Is it
think
not?
something happened.
Is it for real? Because it says stop share.
Does everyone else see her
I can
screen? It
see
might
it.
be my view. Do you see the screen?
Give me a thumbs up if you
Okay.
can see the screen. Everybody who's on
Okay, it's
camera.
me. I apologize. I
Well,
pushed a button and I
Rainy,
thought I had ruined everything. So I apologize to interrupt. Continue.
not at all. No problem. I am glad for that, and I always am looking for
Okay,
logistical help.
fantastic. Thanks everyone for acknowledging that.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. All right, so with that being said, these are the little things that make these exhibits exciting and immersive and full exhibits. You can take a cart of blue blocks, you can put a table, all these things into a blank room, and it's fun, but it doesn't look intentional. But when you add things like graphics and lighting and create a new name for the space, maybe make a logo for it, put a little bit of money into it, think about the logistics behind it. What is the maintenance going to be? That's when it turns into an exhibit. It's not a cart of things in a room, it's an exhibit. And you'll see lots of examples today. That's literally this entire slide deck is just examples. So let's start with structures and environments. When we talk about structures and environments, a lot of times these are the off-the-shelf pieces. They might be custom builds where you have one thing that's custom made, but you can use it in lots of different ways. It's also something that you can repurpose in many different ways. So if you're gonna make an investment, think about that. How can I use this in more than one way? In true Alton Brown fashion, is this a unitasker or is this a multitasker? So think about that. And then when we transition over to environments, we have to think about spaces that are ready for change, spaces that integrate some storage. Maybe it's a wide open space. Does this space have electrical? What are the display opportunities in this space? So there's a lot there. All right, so let's get to the suggestions, resources, real deal places that are doing this. All right, so this is where show and tell happens, and I love this part because I love to shout out all the people who are doing amazing things. Here's Pittsburgh Children's Museum, and they have this amazing light table option. And see how they're using light tables in many different ways? The first one has snow on it. They're in a place that has snow. I do not live in a place that has snow, but I think that's really fun. The other side is like the place I live. There's sand on there. So they're using light tables in many different ways. Can you think about how to use a light table that changes color versus not. What is the substance you're putting on the light table versus mini stuff, big stuff? So think a little bit deeper than just translucent pattern blocks or magnetiles, things like that. You could use sand. You could use snow. How exciting. One caveat, if you buy a regular light table, make sure that light table has a little bit of caulking around the inner if you're putting anything wet on it, because I've made that mistake before. And you don't want to do it because then it wrecks everything that's inside. So think about and test before you do anything liquid or paint on your light table, or make sure it's made for that. All right. Also, here at Boston Children's Museum, they made these really cool, like this is culvert tubing. How can that be multi-purpose? You can do something over the top of it to make a noise. Maybe it becomes an instrument. Maybe you crawl through it. There's so many options there, and you can transform it from a color exhibit that's only black and white. Then maybe you bring it back again for a construction exhibit, just like this. There's so many ways for you to take that, put it into storage, then bring it back out with a whole different function. Also, they built these really cool like tables with ramps. We put some dump trucks on it. We make Lego cars with Duplos, put those on there. Maybe we put Hot Wheels on it. Maybe we just have things that slide or something that has wheels, a created item. But think about how they work in many different ways. Then in the structures category, what about scaffolding? We've taken a big jump from a table to a scaffold. That's really big. But here's Minnesota Children's Museum and the Amazeum. The Amazeum jumped in hardcore with the tapescape and scaffolding. Ooh, wow. If you're at all concerned about liability, look away. But you can also see underneath all of their tubes and things like that, there are nets. So they are looking at safety concerns, and I'm sure they had somebody come in to look at all of that to make sure it's perfectly done. But our friends over in Minnesota, they're using a very dynamic structure to create themed walls without building a 2x4 wall. How cool is that? This is actually in one of their permanent galleries, but I can see where you can use it in any type of transitional gallery for sure. All right, environments. Here's one that's awesome at the Museum of Life and Science. They built this contraption for an exhibit all about contraptions. And it just had this really cool hanging mesh and a whole bunch of materials. What can you build? With the ability to hang or suspend your contraption from the top of the contraption. So cool. So that's a really good example of a custom build. Now we're transitioning over into an environment. Here's an environment that was specifically built to be a transitional gallery. This is at the Children's Museum of Naples, where John, who's on the call, and I collaborated together on the design of this space called the Inventioneers Lab. And we purposefully designed it to have a ton of storage. You see all those colored squares over here. This is all, if you can see, maybe over here. Okay. That is all storage. Oh my gosh. And educators love language right there. And we went through themes. One space, and it was different themes throughout the time. You can see over here, this was our textiles theme where people learned how to sew and knit and weave and embroider. Yes, we gave needles to like 3-year-olds, but they were plastic. So it was good, like darning needles. We had a design experience here. You did some wood filing. There were Lego tables. Here's our architecture one where you could build a house and do some plumbing inside that house. We also did a woodworking. Yes, we had a real drill press that was modified to be safe for kiddos. pushing the limit there. And it worked fantastically. Oh my gosh, it was so lovely, staff involved. Then we also used that space for performances. We used it for meetings. So thinking again about how your environments can change and facilitate new and different over the course of time. Here's another one at the Children's Playhouse. They took this empty space with the intention of it always being a transitional gallery, and they took it from this playland in the meadow to a space theme, then to a winter playscape, but they specifically had said this gallery will be designed to change over the course of time and bought some really cool off the shelf items that could transition from one theme to the next. All right, if you're a children's museum person, you know this is my favorite category. Loose parts. Ooh, I love a good loose part. Oh my gosh, staff hate them. They're hard to clean up. And I can tell you right out, if you have a space to clean them up too, that's one of the biggest design things that you have to do in these transitional spaces if you have loose parts. Where do they go besides the floor? You have to have storage. You have to have intentional storage that people look at and they say, oh, this is where this goes when I'm done. So that's my big caveat about loose parts in transitional spaces. You'll see here on the first slide, these are a few different examples, again, at the Children's Museum of Naples, where John and I collaborated on, and I don't know if there's anybody else on the call from there, but my friends. We had a build it space. We created its own name, its own logo, it had design, it had color, all of that, but it transitioned over the course of time with intentional storage. This is straws and connectors in the middle. If you dive in on straws and connectors, brief your team. Plan for lots of cleanup time. You will assign one staff person to clean up this space or everybody together because it does take a little time to clean up. But also, blue blocks, like I said, not just a cart in the room. This space we made, it's not going all the way over that one. We put together the big blue wall. We did light projection on the floor. We did some dress up. We brought in the light tables. We had a digital graffiti wall, all kinds of things that turned a cart of blue blocks in the middle of the room into a full exhibit in which we titled the Blue Exhibit. And it had its own logo and all the fun things. Also, you can see there too, we took that same space, this build it space, and added in other building materials. We had a whole construction theme here with these foam bricks. And then we added in tool belts and we added in hard hats to make it a fully immersive exhibit instead of just a cart of things. And can you believe, yes, I'm going to show the age of my pictures. This kid is now 17 and this kid is now 20. They're mom. Oh my gosh. Yes, proud mom, of course. And then again, here is those fort exhibits that happen. Chicago Children's Museum did it just like Glazer. In again, when I talked to Nina recently at Glazer, she said this was such a fun exhibit together because we did a lot of thrifting and we were able to get furniture and we just painted it really fun colors. And then we did some graphics on the wall. It looks like Chicago did a very, very similar thing here, buying things that work great. Not every kid gets to take all the couch cushions on and make forts. So let's give them that option. This is a really awesome nature exchange at Science North. They put some display cases up that were so, so fun and asked folks to bring in some cool pieces that they found in nature to trade. I can tell you that Minnesota Science Center has something similar to this, and they ask you to do a little bit of research on your piece before you bring it in. And that in itself is some really cool, playful learning that happens. And it's also motivated by the person who finds a cool thing. If you bring it in and you have a really cool research, they give you more points to trade out for something else. How fun is that, right? Yes, you're probably going to have to buy a little bit of stuff to get started, bring in a cool rock collection, find some cool acorns outside. Everything goes there. I asked the folks in Minnesota too about like what has been the weirdest thing, and they're like sometimes kids just bring in a leaf from outside and they Google it and figure out what tree it's from, and we give them points so they can trade it out for something else because they did the work of researching it and finding it. So what a cool connection, right? All right, more loose parts and a need to be zippy about the rest of this. These are off the shelf. You can buy these ramps, but look at how nicely they put some graphics on the wall. They made it a whole city. Awesome. Here's National Children's Museum with their rigamajig set up. Again, light on the wall. Make it cool. A really intentional storage system. This is now an exhibit. It's not a cart in the middle of a room. Here is loose parts. Here's pool noodles on a pegboard. That pegboard could also turn into a geoboard. It could turn into lots of different things. And this was in an art exhibit at the Miami Children's Museum. Then we have the loose parts, and I saw this in the chat window earlier. Cardboard. We love cardboard. It also has a potential of looking really trashy if you're not intentional about it. But also, you could use a gajillion miles of tape for something like this. So put your tips and tricks about cardboard in the chat so that anybody who's interested can read them. One of the things that we did a while back was that we got flats of cardboard and they were specifically cut into certain shapes so that they could be kind of slot together. And my entire team was like, oh my gosh, Beth, why are we doing this? All they're going to do is crash it over and they're going to rip all the cardboard. And I was like, let's just see. And the coolest part was that because it was flat cardboard with these slots in, it had intention. And also, everybody who played with it was familiar with the material. So they also knew how to be respectful. And over the course of 2.5 or 3 years, we used the same flats of cardboard over and over and over again out on the exhibit floor because the kids knew how to use them. Fantastic, right? All right, now let's jump into partnerships. I'm going to buzz through some of this stuff so we still have time for questions as well. Lovely. Here is Model Railroad Day at COSI. My friend John is on the call, and he was a previous COSI person who knows a lot about this. So if you have questions, put them in the chat, and I'm sure he will answer them for you. Great model railroad folks. Ooh, there's that 17-year-old. Just got home from school. Model Railroad Society that came in and set all their stuff up. How amazing of that partnership. These people are big fans of what they do and they want to protect it. They have their ways of displaying it. And I bet you they will also be so happy to come and talk about it with your people. And if you can have that on display for a little bit, it might not be exactly the same theme as an entire children's museum or an entire art museum, but I bet you can spin it to be on theme. And you can have it be, this is the history of the railroad. Have them come in. Oh my gosh. So, so fun. All right, here's another one. Tapegami here at Maker Faire. How about if you actually call in an artist that has a really cool specialty to co-create something? You don't have to have the workshop. You don't have to have the people power to do all the things. When you partner with someone who has that and you work together. New Children's Museum in San Diego does all of their exhibits along with artisans. It is phenomenal. Google them. They are lovely. All right, now let's talk about more partnerships that came about because of prototyping. Here at Denver Children's Museum, you can see the first over on the left-hand side of the screen. Those are literally the wire racks from Costco or Sam's Club or wherever you buy them from, Wholesale Club. The wire rack that has been turned into a bit of a box on wheels that then becomes a multi-purpose exhibit that you can change out and use for many different things over the course of time. This iteration was a vet clinic. And I'm telling you one thing, well, many things today, but having a type keypad and a phone is wild. Watching kids come up to a reception desk and do the keypad. So many, because they don't get to do that normally. And they can't bang on it and all the things. They need to test that skill and see where the boundary lies. And then giving them an old school phone to take appointments. Let's see what happens there, right? So fun, so fun. So this one at Denver started as that prototype. And now look at their vet clinic that they have now, or a couple years ago that they had. What a great opportunity to partner with a local vet clinic to fund that. Oh my gosh, funding opportunities all over the place. This is proof of concept too. Like you're showing that vet clinic that you know what you're doing, what's interactive, how to make it highly engaging for your audience. And then they say, we see what you did there. We want it to be even more awesome. Here's $50,000. Easy as that, right? We all wish. So that's one of them. Here's another one, a camping exhibit that was prototyped at the Naples Children's Museum. Really kind of easy stuff. We put together a tent. There was a little bit of a fire pit with those cut logs that you can get at discount school supplies, things like that. And they turned it into this great camping exhibit that they had on the floor in between travelers. Yeah, they had somebody on staff that could build a teardrop camper. How cool is that, right? And then they made the ranger station. They put a kayak down so you can go fishing. All of these things were some custom builds, but I can also tell you we had a really, really cool Finnish carpenter that built some of this stuff for us in their garage in collaboration with us. And then they just came and plunked it down. It was so amazing. So good. So good. All right. Last section. Just a few minutes. Here's some seasonal experiences, and these some you might be familiar with already. So here's one that we had from our friends at Northeast Louisiana Children's Museum. They did an Easter village, but instead of it being a one-day experience, they had it over the course of time. Either it was this one, I think the Winter Village they had over the course of time. But it was nice that they had certain spaces in their museum that they definitely wanted to do something for a longer amount of time. And I was on part of the design team as they were starting to design a new museum. And they took these one day or multi-day experiences, and that helped them to design a space inside their new museum that could facilitate something like this, that was more of a larger gallery for transitional exhibits. So there's that. Again, here's our friends at Glazer Children's Museum. I love my friends over in Tampa. And they do this family learning lab together where families create in conjunction with each other. It's so awesome. And then they put all of the cardboard village. This is around Christmas time. So it's like a gingerbread village, but everybody makes a gingerbread house out of cardboard. And then there's a huge display. You can kind of see over at the left-hand side that the intention is to build it and leave it to create the rest of the display. So fun. So fun. And then more Florida love. Miami Children's Museum here. If you're not familiar with the sock skating experience, boom. They not only did sock skating, but they turned the entire room into winter wonderland with snowballs and a reading igloo and build your own snowman, different things like that, all of which are mostly off the shelf items, but curated in a way that you're painting the walls, you're putting lighting on the walls, logo, graphic, things like that. It's attainable. It totally is attainable. All right, so that's it. That's the wild ideas and how to do things like that. You might have capacity for all of it, you might not. Call your professionals if you do not. They are amazing people that do amazing work. So I'm not saying you don't need professionals because they do big work and it's also cool. But I also want to give you permission to try a few things. And if it doesn't work, take it off the floor and think about it differently. So there are the categories. Don't forget graphics, lighting, marketing, names, things like that. All right. Rainey, you want to talk to us a little bit about what you've got coming up?
I
Maybe
do.
for
I first
5
wanted
minutes?
to just, can you hear me?
Yes,
You're
for sure.
good. At first, I just wanted to give a shout out to everyone in the chat. I am just loving seeing how everyone is
A lot.
supporting each other and sharing. And Darcy, you put your cardboard community in there, and I'm just really enjoying the networking and the support that's happening there. So yay. And I'm just
Mm.
everything you just talked about, I was absolutely incredible. So thank you, Beth. But yeah, let me talk about Art Meets Strategy. So, Art Meets Strategy is a free online community for arts and culture professionals. You don't have to work for an art museum. It could be a children's museum, it could be an aquarium, botanical garden, anything like that. I have a background in the visual arts, but we've had many historical societies and all sorts of organizations in there. And one thing I've noticed is that a lot of people who end up in the marketing role don't necessarily have a marketing background. And so this is all about helping you with your branding, your messaging, your storytelling. So join my community. I'm going to put, after I finish talking, I'll put it in the chat. I'm going to be adding all sorts of things to the calendar. If you go to the next slide, Beth. So inside right now, like if you join right now, there's a free course called High Impact Arts Marketing. You'll get all of our Museum Minds recordings. And periodically, I do something called the Arts Marketing Studio, which we're actually finishing up tomorrow, and I'm going to run it again in October. So you'll be one of the first people to hear about that, where we refine your branding and messaging. So and then I think there's one more slide. And I just added this to the calendar this morning. One of the biggest requested topics in the community and one of the biggest questions I get is about storytelling. How do we move away from just announcing things all the time? How can we tell our stories and allow our audience to see themselves in the stories? So on Wednesday, August 26th, I'll be running a workshop called The Art of Storytelling. It's completely free. I'll put that in the chat right now, but I would love to have you in there and for you to join the community as well, because there's a lot coming up. So I'll put that in the chat right now while Beth talks about her community.
Also, before I talk about Museum Leaders Academy, here's a little snapshot. I know I took a lot of time talking, so I'm going to keep this one brief. I do a lot of on-site visits, strategic operations, daily operations consulting, exhibits, observation, and evaluation, looking for gaps in what you have or what you're doing fantastically, things like that. I do a lot of on-site work. But I also do a lot of virtual coaching and virtual consulting. So if you ever need an ear, if you're any one of these people, opening, growing, reinventing, looking for a thought partner, I'm that person. And one place to do that really super easily is inside of Museum Leaders Academy. This is my community. Just go to museumleadersacademy.com and see what it's all about. All right, so for next month, we're talking all about accessibility. And you'll see in tomorrow's email, you'll also get a link to sign up for accessibility. All are welcome. My friend Jen Sabo is coming. She works at Arts for All, and she is a museum person turned executive director of an accessibility organization. So she has absolutely seen accessibility from both sides of the desk, and we're going to have a little conversation about it next month, and we would love for you to be there. All right, we have about 8 minutes. Man, we're doing good. We have so many things to talk about so often. So go ahead and start putting your questions all about sweet spot exhibits, all about life in the Museum Minds world. What do you have questions about? Put them in the chat. Raise your hand. We've got a big enough group today that we can probably strategically ask people to come off of mute. If you raise your hand first, or just pop things into the chat. So we love that. I love how the hive mind can work here. Rainey, did you see any questions along the way? I was chatting
Um,
it up and couldn't necessarily
yes.
read them
In
all.
fact, one of the most recent ones, I'll have to keep going backward, is Hannah, and feel free to come on screen if you would like, but what would be your tips for making a visitor center a sweet spot exhibit? Do you have any thoughts about
Ooh.
that? Or is
Dep-
that
Depends on what kind of visitor center it is. Is it on the side of a highway? Is it at a nature center? Is it at a lighthouse? I think adding in interactives is always a great way to increase the dwell time in any space. Knowing that we learn best by doing, here comes my children's museum background coming in. Um, have something to do, and sometimes it can be kind of out of the ordinary. I just saw a bunch of posts about Heritage Museum, and they were doing using a grinder to make cornmeal, kind of messy, things like that. If you're in a small visitor center, you could have something like that. You have to go to the desk to get a little cup of corn and do some corn grinding if that is part of the history of it. If you're at a lighthouse, how cool would it be to have some sort of light play where you could put colored gels over some sort of light to shine, or have shadow puppets? Going in deeper on what your topic is with some sort of interactive element. Oh, let's see. We have 7,000 square feet of museum floor space in an old grocery store. Ooh, I saw this question. Yes, fantastic. Caitlin, you want to tell us a little bit more about your museum? She said it was very helpful and inspiring. So maybe that's not necessarily a question. But if you
Well,
want to,
I just, if you had like one piece of advice, we're in a big transitionary period. We're in an old health food store, which is really
Mhm.
fun and funky, but we're in a small population and we're a true small museum by every ACM definition. But we have a lot of ideas and things we'd love to have these sweet spot exhibits. I think I noticed there's like a lot of rooms, and I'm just trying to figure out how do we make this work if we just kind of have
right.
spaces.
Well, and that is like in those big spaces like that, it can become this like polka dot experience where like this is one thing, this is one thing, this is one thing, this is one thing. I would say, the first thing that comes to mind for me too is utilize vertical space, because
Okay.
you could have like things hanging down to create the space dividers. You could have floor space dividers that like the floor just changes colors instead of having like blocked off walls for everything.
Okay.
Anybody else have ideas? This is part of Museum Minds to be able to also activate the hive mind. If you have ideas too, feel free. Yeah. Or reach out to Kaylin. Kaylin, you can
Yeah.
also put your email in the chat. I'm seeing lots of really good questions, but that's what I would say. Make use of good vertical space, but also those multi-use transitional things. If you can keep things a bit modular with
Yeah.
also making them look like an exhibit, you also
Okay.
have the world as your oyster because you can change your floor plan and keep people guessing. One caution there. I like to usually keep a couple galleries as permanent because there is comfort in predictability. I'm going to say
Okay.
that again. There's comfort in predictability, especially for your neurodivergent people. As you walk into a space, if everything has changed, whoa, whoa, whoa. But if you have a couple galleries that are the same all the time, that's my comfort zone. That's where
Okay.
I can go to that is predictable and it's comfortable and I can try new things. Paul, give it to us.
Thank you.
Um, can I put something in the chat? That's totally
Absolutely.
free. That might be helpful
Yes.
to Kaylin and other people.
Yes.
The cheap books are like 100 reproducible exhibits. It's free. And also the great big exhibit museum exhibit resource list is like a
Yes.
place to get different kinds of stuff like, oh, I'm looking for fake food or smells or things like that.
Mhm.
So
Yes. If you guys don't know
sorry,
Paul,
it's inherently on my website, so it is a little pluggy, but it's all free.
well, and that's what this place is for. Like, I think that all of Museum Minds is this like value add. If you can add something in that's free, I'm more than happy. If you guys don't know Paul Orselli is an exhibits heavy hitter in the skull. So thank you so much for chiming in and let us know about your free resources that you have too, because that's a lot of times a stumbling block for people is just where do I find it? It's so cool, but where do I find it? If you go onto his page, you're going to like go down rabbit holes of no tomorrow of resources and goodness. Oh my gosh. Yes, yes, yes. All right. We have about 2 minutes left. Oh my gosh. Somebody said lean into the old grocery shelving in your grocery store if they still exist. Oh, that's really fun. Let's see. Who is
Rebecca.
planning and executing your exhibits? Oh my gosh, yes. In the past, I did have an exhibit manager who we worked as a team to do those types of things. And then also I've seen many, many, many people oversee, depending on the bigness or the smallness. Also, there's a couple people on this call right now, one of which who asked that question, that has some really good kind of off the shelf exhibits that you can buy that are multifunctional. So that kind of takes the lift off of having to build a custom piece as well. Let's see. Ooh, there's talk of Meow Wolf. Love Meow Wolf. I have to say that I have a whole note in my phone and I captured the things that we said when we were at Meow Wolf. And it was like, whoa, wow, oh my gosh, how do they keep this place clean? I never even knew this was here. Holy smokes. How do we get there? Yeah, it was so fun. So fun. All right. Anything else? Oh, we are at time. Oh, this conversation could go on for a long time. My goodness, there's so much goodness here. Let's keep the conversation going, whether it's on social media, things like that. Feel free to reach out to us, grab email addresses of other friends that are on the call right now. We want to keep this going. Also, if you want to stick around for a little bit, we will have the after party after this. But if you got to run, thank you so much for being here. Come next month for all are welcome. And forever, forever, thank you so much for being part of the Museum Minds crew. Eric, thanks for being here. John, thanks for being here and contributing to all of the content that was given today. I really, really appreciate it. Hopefully, we chat with all of you soon.